The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most planets, made of metal and crystal that shined with its own light. Inside the station's great council hall, alien beings from across the galaxy sat around a table that could hold 1,000 creatures. Admiral Kethvar stood at the center of the room. He was tall and covered in green scales with yellow eyes that glowed like fire. His people, the Sauroch, had been warriors for millions of years. They ruled over many star systems and had never lost a war. "My fellow council members," Kethvar said in his deep, rough voice, "we have received another message from the small planet called Earth." The other aliens around the table made different sounds. Some hissed, others clicked their claws, and a few made buzzing noises. They were all part of the Galactic Dominion, the greatest empire that had ever existed. Together they ruled over thousands of worlds and billions of creatures. Kethvar pressed a button on the table. A blue light appeared in the air, showing words in the common galactic language. The message was short and simple. "We advise peaceful contact. Do not attempt hostile action against Earth." The council hall filled with loud laughter. General Vextor of the Crick Swarm made a clicking sound that meant he found something very funny. Vextor looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and wings that buzzed when he was excited. "They advise us?" Vextor clicked. "These tiny creatures from a backward planet dare to give advice to the Dominion?" "How many ships do they have?" asked Chancellor Mordak, whose people looked like walking trees with too many eyes. "Our scouts report maybe 50 small vessels," Kethvar answered. "No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no quantum drives. They still use chemical rockets like children playing with toys." More laughter filled the hall. The Dominion had conquered 847 different worlds. Their fleets had millions of ships. Their weapons could destroy entire planets. What could one small world do against such power? In the corner of the great hall, a human sat in chains. His name was Jiho Kim, and he had been a prisoner for 3 years. The aliens had captured him when his small research ship got too close to their territory. Since then, he had learned their languages and watched their meetings. Jiho was not a soldier. He had been a teacher back on Earth, studying languages and cultures. But 3 years of watching the Dominion had taught him many things about how they thought and acted. "Bring the human forward," Kethvar ordered. 2 robot guards dragged Jiho to the center of the hall. The chains around his hands and feet made walking hard, but he kept his back straight. He had learned that showing fear only made the aliens treat him worse. "Human," Kethvar said, looking down at Jiho with his burning yellow eyes. "Your people have sent us this foolish message. Tell us what weapons Earth has that we should fear." Jiho looked around the hall at all the alien faces staring at him. He had seen what the Dominion did to worlds that fought back. He had watched recordings of cities burning and people screaming. But he had also learned something about these aliens during his 3 years as their prisoner. "You do not understand what you are dealing with," Jiho said quietly. "We understand perfectly." General Vextor buzzed angrily. "Your planet has no real weapons. Your people are weak and divided. We have studied your broadcasts. You fight wars among yourselves over tiny pieces of land. That is exactly why you should be afraid," Jiho replied. The aliens looked confused. Chancellor Mordak's many eyes blinked in different patterns. "You make no sense, human. If your people fight each other, they cannot fight us." Jiho shook his head slowly. "You have conquered 847 worlds, but you have never faced humans before. Every world you took gave up when they saw your fleets. They surrendered because they wanted to live. And humans do not want to live?" Kethvar asked. "Humans want to live," Jiho said. "But more than that, humans hate being told what to do by anyone. And we especially hate bullies." "Bullies?" Vextor's wings buzzed louder. "We are conquerors! We bring order to chaos." "You are bullies," Jiho repeated. "And every human child learns what to do with bullies. You hit them back even if they are bigger than you. Even if it hurts. Even if you lose." The council members made angry noises. Some of them wanted to hurt Jiho for his words, but Kethvar raised a scaled hand for silence. "Your warnings mean nothing," the admiral said. "We have ships that can crack planets in half. We have weapons that can boil oceans. What can your primitive people do against us?" Jiho looked directly into Kethvar's glowing eyes. "You will find out." "Indeed we will." Baxter clicked excitedly. "Admiral Kethvar, let me take my swarm to this Earth. I will show the Council how easily humans can be crushed. It will be good practice for my younger warriors." Kethvar thought for a moment. The Crick Swarm was one of the Dominion's most feared fleets. Vextor had never lost a battle. His insect warriors were fast, deadly, and completely loyal. Very well, General, Kethavar decided. Take 10,000 ships. Make this conquest quick and clean. We want other worlds to see what happens when someone sends threatening messages to the Dominion. 10,000 ships? Jiho asked, sounding surprised. For one small planet? We want to be sure, Vextor buzzed with amusement. Your people will see our fleet and surrender immediately. It will be over in a day. Jiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised all the aliens in the hall. He started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh people make when they know something terrible is about to happen. What is so funny, human? Kethavar demanded. You are sending 10,000 ships, Jiho said, still laughing. To attack Earth. The same Earth that sent you a polite warning asking you not to start a fight. Yes, and you think this is a good idea? The laughter stopped. Jiho's face became very serious. You have no idea what you are about to do. You think humans are weak because we fight among ourselves, but you do not understand something important about my people. And what is that? Chancellor Mordak asked. When someone threatens Earth, Jiho said quietly, humans stop fighting each other, and we start fighting together, all of us. Every single human on the planet becomes your enemy. Let them unite. Vextor clicked dismissively. It will not matter. Our technology is thousands of years ahead of theirs. Your technology is advanced, Jiho agreed. But humans do not win wars with better technology. We win wars by being more stubborn than anyone else in the universe. We win by never giving up even when we should. The council members looked at each other uncertainly. Something in the human's voice made them uncomfortable, though they could not say why. Enough talk, Kethavar declared. General Vextor, prepare your fleet. We leave for Earth in 1 day. As the guards dragged Jiho back to his corner, he called out one last warning. You were told not to do this. Remember that when your ships start dying. The great hall fell silent. Outside the station, stars twinkled peacefully in the endless night. None of the aliens knew that far away. On a small blue planet, humans were already preparing for war. Dr. Minho Park stared at the computer screens in the deep space monitoring array. The underground facility was hidden deep beneath a mountain in South Korea, far from any city. For 20 years, Minho had watched the stars looking for signs of alien life. Now he wished he had never found any. The screens showed thousands of red dots moving through space toward Earth. Each dot was an alien warship. Minho counted them 3 times to be sure. 10,000 ships, just like the intercepted message had said. How long until they reach us? Asked Dr. Hana Choi, who stood beside him looking at the same terrible numbers. 6 months, Minho answered. Maybe 7 if they stop to refuel. Hana was quiet for a moment. She was one of Earth's best engineers and her mind was already working on solutions. That is not much time. It is enough, Minho said. We knew this day might come. We have been preparing. Both scientists looked at the big red button on the wall. It had never been pressed before, but everyone who worked in the facility knew what it would do. Above the button, words were written in many languages. Protocol 7, last resort. Minho walked over and placed his hand on the button. Are you ready to change everything, Hana? The whole world will change, she replied. Nothing will ever be the same. Then let us begin. Minho pressed the button. Alarms started ringing all across the facility. Red lights flashed on and off. In every room, computer screens showed the same message. Protocol 7 activated. This is not a drill. Far above them, similar alarms were ringing in secret facilities around the world. In underground bunkers beneath Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and London, people who had trained their whole lives for this moment started working. President Yuna Lee was in a meeting when her phone buzzed with the special signal. She looked at the message and felt her heart skip a beat. Then she stood up and told everyone else to leave the room. Cancel all my meetings, she told her assistant. Get me a secure line to every world leader. Tell them to meet me in the Situation Room in 1 hour. The Situation Room was not the one that reporters sometimes saw on television. This one was much deeper underground, protected by thick metal walls and powered by its own reactor. When President Lee arrived, leaders from every major nation were already waiting on secure video screens. Ladies and gentlemen, President Lee began, we have received confirmation that an alien fleet of 10,000 ships is approaching Earth with hostile intent. They will arrive in approximately 6 months. Some of the world leaders looked shocked. Others seemed angry. A few looked scared. But President Lee noticed that none of them looked surprised. They had all been briefed about this possibility years ago. "What are our options?" asked the British Prime Minister. "We have 3 choices," President Lee replied. "We can try to negotiate. We can surrender immediately, or we can implement Protocol 7. "What exactly is Protocol 7? Asked the German Chancellor. President Lee looked directly into the camera. Protocol 7 assumes that any alien race, capable of interstellar travel and willing to attack Earth without provocation, is too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The room was quiet for a long moment. "You are talking about total war," said the Russian president. I'm talking about survival," President Lee replied. "These aliens have conquered 847 other worlds. Every single one of those worlds tried to negotiate or surrender. It did not save them." "How do you know that?" asked the Japanese Prime Minister. "Because we have been listening to their communications for 3 years. We know about Jiho Kim, the human they captured. We know about their empire. We know how they think and how they fight." President Lee pressed a button on her table. The screens around the room showed pictures of dead worlds, burned cities, and enslaved people. "This is what happens to planets that trust the Galactic Dominion. This is what they will do to Earth if we let them." The Chinese president leaned forward in his chair. "What does Protocol 7 require from each nation?" "Everything," President Lee answered. "Every resource, every person, every secret weapon we have been developing. This is not about nations anymore. This is about the human race." One by one, the world leaders agreed. Protocol 7 was now active across the entire planet. In the weeks that followed, Earth began to change in ways that no one except a few scientists had ever imagined. Dr. Hana Choi led teams of engineers who started modifying power plants, communication towers, and even ordinary buildings. To anyone watching, it would look like routine maintenance and upgrades. Dr. Taeyang Wu worked with space agencies around the world to launch what appeared to be new communication satellites. The launches were announced on the news as improvements to internet and phone service. But the satellites carried much more than communication equipment. In secret facilities, weapons that had only existed in computer simulations were built and tested. Scientists who had spent years arguing about theoretical physics suddenly found unlimited funding for their wildest ideas. Captain Minjae commanded a small space station that officially monitored space weather. But the station's real purpose was much more important. It was Earth's first line of defense, and it would be the first to make contact with the alien fleet. As the months passed, people around the world noticed small changes. Construction projects that seemed to have no purpose, new factories being built in remote areas, military exercises that went on longer than usual. But most people were too busy with their daily lives to worry about these things. The aliens would have noticed the changes if they had been looking carefully. But they were not worried about Earth. Their scouts had reported that humans still used primitive technology. The planet had no orbital defenses, no energy shields, no fleet of warships waiting in space. What the aliens did not understand was that humans did not fight the same way as other species. Other races built obvious defenses that could be seen from space. They gathered their fleets where enemies could count them. They followed the rules of warfare that had been used for thousands of years across the galaxy. Humans did not follow those rules. Humans had learned to fight wars where the enemy never saw the real weapons until it was too late. 6 months after Protocol 7 was activated, Captain Minjae sat in his command chair aboard the monitoring station. His screens showed the alien fleet approaching the edge of Earth's solar system. 10,000 ships, just as predicted. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel." "Put it on speakers," Minjae ordered. The alien voice was translated by computers into perfect English. "Primitive humans of Earth, this is General Vextor of the Crick Swarm, servant of the Galactic Dominion. Your planet has been selected for conquest. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick." Minjae smiled. He had been practicing what to say for months. "General Vextor, this is Captain Minjae of the Earth Defense Corps. We tried to warn your people. We asked politely for peaceful contact. You chose to ignore that warning. Your warnings mean nothing to us, human. Prepare for orbital bombardment." "General," Minjae said calmly, "I am authorized to offer you one final chance. Turn your fleet around and leave our solar system. Go home." Tell your dominion that humans wish to live in peace, but we will not be conquered." The alien general made a sound that might have been laughter. "You have no ships, no weapons, no hope. In 1 hour, we will begin destroying your cities. Your planet will burn." "In that case," Minjay replied, "let me say something that you should remember for the rest of your very short life. Speak quickly, human." Minjay's voice became cold and hard. "You were warned. What happens next is your choice, not ours. You could have left us alone. You could have come in peace. Instead, you chose war. Yes, we chose war, and you will lose." "General Vextor," Minjay said quietly, "you have no idea what war means to humans, but you are about to learn." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Minjay looked around at his crew. They were all young people who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not survive it. "All stations, prepare for Phase 2, Minjay announced. "The aliens have made their choice." Around the solar system, hidden weapons that had been waiting for months began to wake up. On Earth's moon, charges that had been carefully placed and disguised as mining equipment armed themselves. In the asteroid belt, what looked like ordinary space rocks began moving into new positions, and on Earth itself, 6 billion humans stopped what they were doing and looked up at the stars, knowing that their planet was about to be attacked by an alien empire that had never lost a war. The aliens thought they were about to conquer another primitive world. They had no idea that they had just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy. General Vextor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. The planet looked peaceful and blue, with white clouds swirling over brown and green continents. It reminded him of many other worlds he had conquered over the years. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered his weapons officer. Thousands of energy beams shot down from the alien fleet toward Earth's surface. They struck cities, military bases, and anything that looked important. Explosions bloomed like flowers across the continents as the bombardment continued for 3 hours. "Bombardment complete, General," reported the weapons officer. "All major population centers have been targeted." Vextor nodded with satisfaction. This was always the easiest part of conquering a new world. Most planets surrendered after seeing their cities burn. The few that did not surrender were usually too damaged to fight back effectively. "Send scouts to assess the damage," Vextor commanded. "I want to know how many humans survived." But as the scout ships approached Earth, something unexpected happened. The planet's moon, which had been quietly orbiting in the background, suddenly exploded. It did not explode randomly. The explosion was perfectly controlled, designed to send millions of pieces of rock flying in exactly the right directions. Each piece had been calculated by computers to hit specific targets at devastating speeds. The moon fragments struck the alien fleet like a cosmic shotgun blast. Ships that had survived battles across the galaxy were torn apart by simple rocks moving at incredible velocity. In the space of 10 minutes, 3,000 alien vessels were destroyed or disabled. What happened? Vextor screamed at his crew as alarms wailed throughout the ship. "The moon, General! The humans turned their moon into a weapon." Vextor stared at the screen in shock. He had conquered hundreds of worlds, but he had never seen anything like this. Who would destroy their own moon just to hurt an enemy? "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through," Vextor ordered. A human face appeared on the screen. It was a woman in a military uniform, standing in what looked like an underground command center. "General Vextor, I am Colonel Soman Yang of the Earth Defense Corps. I hope you enjoyed our first lesson in human warfare." "You destroyed your own moon." Vextor clicked angrily. "We did what was necessary," Colonel Jang replied calmly. "You see, General, humans have been thinking about this day for a very long time. We have read every story about alien invasion. We have studied every possible scenario, and we learned something important." "What?" "Aliens always make the same mistakes. You always attack from orbit first. You always assume we will fight the same way you do, and you never expect us to sacrifice everything to win." Before Vextor could respond, more alarms started ringing. "General," his sensor operator called out, "we have multiple contacts approaching from the asteroid belt." On the screen, what had looked like ordinary space rocks were now moving with purpose. Hidden engines revealed themselves as dozens of human spacecraft emerged from camouflaged positions throughout the solar system. "Impossible," Vextor whispered. "Our scouts reported that humans had no real space fleet." Colonel Jang smiled on the transmission. "Your scouts saw what we wanted them to see. Did you really think we would keep our weapons where you could count them? The human ships were smaller than the alien vessels, but they moved faster and with deadly precision. Instead of energy weapons, they fired simple metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The kinetic kill vehicles punched through alien shields like they were made of paper. But the real surprise was not the weapons. It was how the humans fought. Every alien battle Vextor had ever seen followed predictable patterns. Ships formed lines, exchanged fire, and the side with better technology usually won. The humans did not form lines. They attacked from every direction at once, using tactics that made no logical sense. They rammed damaged ships into healthy ones. They used their own vessels as guided missiles. They fought like they were insane. Why do they fight this way? Vextor asked his tactical officer. They are destroying their own ships. I do not know, General. It is not logical. What Vextor did not understand was that the humans were not fighting to preserve their fleet. They were fighting to send a message that would be heard across the entire galaxy. Earth would not be conquered, no matter the cost. Colonel Zhang's voice came through the speakers again. General, we have studied your people for 3 years. We know how you think. We know what you fear, and now we are going to use that knowledge against you. Suddenly, every alien ship in the fleet began receiving the same transmission. But it was not coming from Earth. It was coming from their own communication systems, which had somehow been infected with a human virus. The transmission showed images of destroyed alien vessels, burning Dominion flags and dead alien soldiers. But the worst part was the sound. It was human laughter, mixed with recordings of alien screams from previous battles. The psychological warfare was designed to break alien morale, and it was working. Panic spread through the alien fleet as ship commanders lost control of their crews. Some aliens tried to flee. Others fired at their own vessels by mistake. The perfect discipline that had made the Dominion unstoppable began to crumble. Turn off the communications, Vextor ordered. I cannot, General. The humans have taken control of our systems. In the middle of the chaos, a small human ship approached Vextor's flagship. It was badly damaged and leaking atmosphere, but it kept coming. The pilot's voice crackled over the radio. This is Lieutenant Kiwoo Nam of the Earth Defense Corps. My ship is dead, my crew is gone, but I have one more torpedo, and I know exactly where I want to put it. Vextor watched in horror as the human ship crashed into his vessel's main weapons array. The explosion took out half the flagship's firepower. But more importantly, it showed every alien in the fleet that humans would die before they would surrender. As the battle continued, Vextor began to understand why Earth's warning message had been so confident. Humans did not fight wars to win territory or resources. They fought wars to make sure their enemies could never threaten them again. Every human tactic was designed to be remembered. Every sacrifice was meant to send a message. They were not just defeating the Dominion fleet. They were creating a legend that would spread fear throughout the galaxy. General, his communication officer reported, we are receiving surrender requests from 47 of our ships. Their commanders want permission to retreat. Denied. Vextor clicked furiously. We are the Crick Swarm. We do not retreat. But even as he spoke, more alien ships were breaking formation and fleeing toward deep space. The humans had done something that no enemy of the Dominion had ever accomplished. They had made the mighty Crick Swarm afraid. By the end of the first day of fighting, the alien fleet was reduced to less than half its original size. The survivors were scattered, demoralized, and desperately trying to escape the solar system. Vextor's flagship was among the few vessels still trying to fight, but it was hopeless. Human ships surrounded him on all sides, and every minute brought news of more alien defeats. General, his first officer said quietly, perhaps it is time to consider retreat. Vextor looked at the tactical display showing the remains of his once mighty fleet. In 3 years of studying humans, he had learned about their technology, their politics, and their military capabilities. But he had never understood the most important thing about them. Humans did not just fight to win. They fought to make sure the fight would never happen again. Send a message to all surviving ships, Vextor finally ordered. Full retreat. Maximum speed. Get us out of this system. As the beaten alien fleet fled toward the stars, Colonel Zhang's voice followed them one last time. Remember this day, General. Remember that you were warned. And make sure everyone in your empire knows what happens when someone threatens Earth. The first battle between humans and the Galactic Dominion was over. but both sides knew that the real war was just beginning. In the wreckage of the alien fleet, among the debris of destroyed ships and shattered dreams of conquest, a new truth was born. The galaxy's greatest empire had met its match in a species that refused to be conquered, no matter the odds. And in the darkness of space, that truth began its journey to the stars. The news traveled faster than the fastest ships in the galaxy. Within days, every civilized world had heard the impossible story. The mighty Crick swarm, terror of 1,000 worlds, had been defeated by primitive humans from a tiny planet called Earth. On the Dominion capital world of Nexus Prime, Admiral Kethavar stared at the reports in disbelief. Of the 10,000 ships that had attacked Earth, only 3,000 had returned. The survivors told stories that sounded like madness. They turned their moon into a weapon, reported Captain Zixtal, one of the few Crick's officers who had escaped. They sacrificed their own satellite to destroy our fleet. Impossible, Kethavar hissed. No rational species would do such a thing. That is the point, Admiral. Humans are not rational. They fight like they have nothing to lose. Kethavar dismissed the captain and called for his intelligence officers. I want every piece of data we have on these humans. Find their weaknesses. There must be a way to defeat them. But while the Dominion struggled to understand what had happened at Earth, the story was already changing the galaxy. On worlds that had been conquered decades ago, people gathered in secret to whisper about the planet that had fought back and won. Meanwhile, in a high-security prison ship traveling toward Nexus Prime, Ji-Ho Kim and Captain Aaron Ko were planning their escape. Aaron had been captured 6 months earlier when her research vessel was attacked by Dominion raiders. Like Ji-Ho, she had spent her time in captivity learning everything she could about their captors. The guard shift changes in 10 minutes, Aaron whispered as they worked in the ship's maintenance section. That gives us maybe 20 minutes to reach the communication array. Is that enough time? Ji-Ho asked. It has to be, Aaron replied. This might be our only chance. Both humans had been watching the Dominion for years, studying their technology and their weaknesses. They knew that the Empire's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness, the vast communication network that connected every world and ship. When the guard shift changed, Ji-Ho and Aaron moved quickly through the maintenance tunnels. Aaron's engineering training helped her disable the security systems, while Ji-Ho's knowledge of alien languages let him understand the computer interfaces. I am in, Aaron announced as she connected her improvised device to the ship's communication array. But we only have a few minutes before they notice the unauthorized transmission. That will be enough, Ji-Ho said, typing rapidly on the alien keyboard. I am uploading everything we learned about human military doctrine during the battle. Every tactic, every strategy, every psychological warfare technique we used. The upload was not just information, it was hope. For the first time in the EOS Dominion's history, conquered peoples were learning that their oppressors could be defeated. More importantly, they were learning how to do it. Upload complete, Ji-Ho reported. Now let us get out of here. But as they tried to escape, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Guards with energy weapons surrounded them in the corridor. Well, Aaron said calmly, at least we got the message out. Yes, Ji-Ho agreed. Now the whole galaxy will know. The message they had uploaded spread through the galactic communication network like wildfire. It contained detailed analysis of how humans had defeated the Crick swarm, translated into hundreds of alien languages. But more than just tactics, it carried something that conquered worlds had not felt in centuries: hope. On a factory world called Metalia, where robot-like beings had been enslaved for 50 years, workers gathered around hidden communication devices to read the human message. For the first time, they learned that the Dominion could be beaten. Look at this, whispered Worker Unit 77339 to his companions. The humans did not just fight, they made the Dominion afraid. Is it really possible? Asked another worker. The humans proved it is possible. They showed us the way. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. Species that had given up hope of freedom began to remember what it felt like to fight back. The human message was like a spark landing in dry grass. It started fires everywhere. On the ocean world of Aquatica, The fish-like nautiloid people began organizing resistance cells. They had been peaceful traders before the Dominion conquered them, but now they learned about human tactics of psychological warfare and asymmetric combat. On the desert planet Sandara, the nomadic tribes that had been scattered by Dominion forces began to reunite. They studied human methods of turning their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. Even on heavily guarded worlds where rebellion seemed impossible, the message gave people new ideas. They learned that the Dominion's vast size and complexity could be used against them. They discovered that sometimes the best way to fight a stronger enemy was to make them fight themselves. But the most important part of the human message was not about tactics or weapons. It was about attitude. Humans had shown the galaxy that some things were worth dying for, and that no empire was too powerful to defeat if people were willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. The Dominion leadership tried to stop the message from spreading, but it was too late. The communication network that had once been their greatest tool for control was now carrying rebellion to every corner of their empire. "Sir," reported Intelligence Chief Korthon to Admiral Kethvar, "we are receiving reports of unrest on 17 worlds. The humans' message has inspired coordinated resistance movements." "How coordinated?" Kethvar demanded. "They are using human tactics, sir. Hit-and-run attacks, psychological warfare, turning our own systems against us. It is like fighting the humans all over again, but on multiple worlds at once." Kethvar felt something he had not experienced in his long military career: doubt. The Dominion had always succeeded because conquered species fought predictably. They formed armies, claimed territory, and battled for resources. Such conflicts could be won with superior technology and numbers. But the human way of warfare was different. It was not about winning battles. It was about making the enemy afraid to fight at all. And that fear was now spreading faster than the Dominion could contain it. On Earth, military leaders watched the galactic communication traffic with satisfaction. Admiral Sunhee Bay, the new commander of Earth's expanding defense forces, smiled as she read the latest intelligence reports. "It is working exactly as we hoped," she told President Lee during their secure video conference. "The Dominion is facing rebellions on dozens of worlds. Their forces are scattered, trying to put out fires everywhere at once." "And our preparation for Phase 3? President Lee asked. "Nearly complete. Our new ships will be ready within the month. But more importantly, we now have allies throughout the galaxy. Species that were enemies of the Dominion are asking to join our cause." President Lee nodded thoughtfully. "We must be careful, Admiral. We did not fight to become conquerors ourselves." "Understood, Madam President. But we cannot allow the Dominion to recover and threaten Earth again. Sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to make sure your enemies are no longer capable of war." As they spoke, hidden shipyards throughout the solar system were building vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human engineering had learned from captured Dominion technology, but had improved it in ways the aliens could not imagine. The new human fleet would not just defend Earth, it would carry the war to the Dominion's home territory, bringing the same fear to their core worlds that they had brought to so many others. But first, they had to rescue 2 humans who had risked everything to give the galaxy hope. "Admiral," President Lee said, "I want you to launch a rescue mission for Jiho Kim and Aaron Ko. They have done more for the cause of freedom than any soldiers in our fleet." "It will be dangerous," Admiral Bay warned. "The prison ship is heavily guarded and deep in Dominion territory." "Then we had better make sure we succeed," President Lee replied. "Those 2 people started a revolution that will free the entire galaxy. We owe them everything." As the meeting ended, both women looked up at the stars through the secure facility's windows. Somewhere out there in the darkness between worlds, the future of galactic civilization was being decided. The Dominion had ruled through fear for 1,000 years, but now they were learning what it felt like to be afraid themselves, and in the growing rebellion spreading across their empire, they could hear the echo of a simple message that had changed everything: do not mess with Earth. 2 years after the failed invasion of Earth, the Galactic Dominion was dying. What had once been the most powerful empire in the galaxy was now a collection of desperate worlds fighting rebellions on every front. Admiral HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the wreckage of Nexus Prime. The great space station that had been the center of Dominion power was now under siege by a combined fleet of humans and liberated alien species, sir. His communications officer reported. The humans are requesting a final surrender. Never, HFY hissed. The Dominion does not surrender to primitives, but even as he spoke, he knew the war was already lost. The humans had not just defeated the Dominion militarily, they had destroyed its spirit. Every world that had once feared Dominion power now fought against it. On the command ship leading the Liberation Fleet, General Kyung Lim studied the tactical displays. She had volunteered to lead this final battle because she understood something important about warfare. Sometimes you had to show mercy to create lasting peace. All ships. This is General Lim, she announced over the fleet communication system. Remember that we are not here to conquer. We are here to free. Target military installations only. Protect civilian areas. The final battle for Nexus Prime was unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the usual massive space battle with thousands of ships firing at each other, it was a careful, precise operation designed to minimize casualties. Human engineers had studied the station's design for months. They knew exactly where to strike to disable its weapons without destroying the millions of civilians who lived there. Every attack was calculated to preserve life while eliminating the Dominion's ability to fight. But the real battle was not happening in space. It was taking place in the corridors of Nexus Prime itself, where Dominion leaders had to face the reality of their defeat. Captain Dong-Hyun Yu led a small team of human soldiers through the station's command center. They moved quickly but carefully, avoiding unnecessary violence. Their mission was not to kill, it was to capture the Dominion leadership alive. This way, called Sergeant Minji Lee, who had studied the station's layout for weeks. The main command center is just ahead. As they approached the heavy doors of the command center, Captain Yu stopped his team. Remember, we are here to end a war, not start a massacre. We take prisoners, not trophies. The doors burst open and the human soldiers entered to find Admiral HFY waiting for them with a small group of loyal officers. The alien admiral stood straight and proud despite the defeat surrounding him. I am Admiral HFY of the Galactic Dominion, he announced in his deep, rough voice. I demand to speak with your commanding officer. I am Captain Dong-Hyun Yu of the Earth Liberation Forces, Dong-Hyun replied respectfully. Admiral, your war is over. Surrender now and your people will be treated with honor. HFY's yellow eyes blazed with fury. Honor? You primitives know nothing of honor. We ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. And in those 1,000 years, how many worlds did you destroy? How many species did you enslave? Dong-Hyun asked calmly. We brought order to chaos. We created civilization. Dong-Hyun shook his head. You created fear. And fear is not civilization. It is just the absence of freedom. The two leaders faced each other in the command center while around them, the sounds of battle grew quieter. The Dominion's last stronghold was falling, but this conversation would determine what kind of peace would follow the war. You cannot understand, HFY said, his voice becoming desperate. My people are warriors. We are born to conquer. It is what we are. No, Dong-Hyun replied firmly. That is what you chose to become. But you can choose to be something else. Before HFY could respond, alarms started ringing throughout the command center. His communication officer looked up from his console with shock. Admiral, I am receiving surrender signals from all remaining Dominion fleets. Every commander is laying down arms. HFY stared at the displays showing his collapsing empire. Worlds that had been loyal for centuries were declaring independence. Ships that had never retreated were surrendering without a fight. How? He whispered. How did you destroy everything we built? Captain Yu moved closer to the defeated admiral. When he spoke, his voice was not triumphant or cruel. It was sad. We did not destroy your empire, Admiral. We showed people that they did not have to be afraid of it anymore. Once people stopped being afraid, your empire had nothing left. In the weeks that followed, the liberation of Nexus Prime became the symbol of the war's end. But more importantly, it became the symbol of what came after. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in the same council chamber where Earth's first warning had been ignored years earlier. But now, instead of conquerors deciding the fate of others, free peoples were choosing their own future. President Lee stood before the assembled delegates, representing not just Earth but all the species that had fought for freedom. "We have won a great victory," she began, "but victory means nothing if we do not build something better than what we destroyed." "What do you propose?" asked Elder Zixaria of the Crystalline Collective, whose people had been among the first to join the human-led rebellion. "We propose the Galactic Federation," President Lee announced. "A voluntary alliance of free worlds, dedicated to protecting each other's independence and preventing any single species from dominating the galaxy again." The debate that followed lasted for days. Some species wanted revenge against their former oppressors. Others worried that the Federation would become just another empire. But in the end, the memory of what they had fought for won the argument. The charter they created was simple but revolutionary. No world could be forced to join. No species could be enslaved. No empire could conquer others without facing the combined wrath of all free peoples. And at the center of it all was Earth's promise. "We will protect what we love, no matter the cost." Admiral Kethvar, now a prisoner of war, watched the formation of the Federation with growing understanding. In his cell on a prison asteroid, he had time to think about everything that had happened. A human guard brought him his daily meal and sat down to talk, as had become their routine. "Do you understand now?" asked Lieutenant Young-Ho Park, who had volunteered for guard duty because he wanted to learn about former enemies. "I think so," Kethvar replied slowly. "We conquered through fear. You conquered through hope." "We did not conquer at all," Young-Ho corrected gently. "We liberated." "There is a difference." "Is there?" Young-Ho nodded. "When you conquer, you take something away from people. When you liberate, you give them back what was always theirs." As the months passed, even former Dominion worlds began asking to join the Federation. They discovered that being part of a voluntary alliance was very different from being subjects of an empire. The galaxy slowly healed from centuries of war and oppression. Trade routes reopened, scientific knowledge was shared freely, art and culture flourished as species that had been enemies learned to appreciate each other's differences. But the most important change was in how conflicts were resolved. When disputes arose between worlds, they brought them to the Federation Council for peaceful resolution. When aggressive species threatened others, they found themselves facing not just their intended victims, but the entire Federation. The message that had started everything was now carved in stone above the Federation Council chamber. Translated into every known language, "Do not mess with Earth or any free world." And in the darkness of space, ancient species that had once considered expansion and conquest quietly changed their plans. They had learned the most important lesson in galactic history. There were some fights you could not win no matter how powerful you thought you were. The war for galactic freedom was over. The peace that followed would last for generations, protected by species that had learned to value liberty above all else. On Earth, children played in parks under alien stars that no longer represented a threat. They grew up in a galaxy where freedom was not just a dream, but a promise kept by those who understood that some things were worth any sacrifice. And sometimes, late at night, those children would look up at the stars and remember the story of how their small blue planet had changed the entire galaxy. Not through conquest or domination, but by showing everyone that freedom was worth fighting for. The humans had kept their promise. They had protected what they loved, and in doing so, they had given the galaxy a gift that would never be forgotten. The knowledge that no empire, no matter how mighty, could stand against people who refused to surrender their freedom. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of free worlds had begun,